Pod Apostle. Help us build the kingdom. Like, share, and subscribe. So it seems like this gospel comes up every other week, and then I'll explain, this idea of titles and what a title is. They've taken their seat on the chair of Moses. The scribes and the Pharisees have been given a certain authority, and that authority is real. Do what they tell you. Don't follow their example. All right, now that is kind of word to the wise for every age. We have to be careful when we are given a position of authority that it's not just our words, that it's our actions that are worth following. Okay. And I hope and pray that would be the case for me and each one of you who are in a place of some authority. And then they go on to talk about the titles: rabbi, which means teacher, and master, which means somebody who has achieved great notoriety in their craft. They're master craftsmen, or a master builder, or a master instructor, or whatever it might be. And Jesus is saying, don't live your life trying to get the title of father, rabbi, teacher, master. In fact, he goes so far as to say, call nobody any of those titles, which we would say is hyperbole, because we still use those words, don't we? We still use those words. But the seeking of a title for the sake of having a title is not the path. It's not the way of Jesus. So humility is the way of Jesus. I want to talk about St. Rose ever so briefly, and then the reading from Ruth. St. Rose lived in Peru. St. Rose, one reason I want to talk about her is, her church is right across the town over there, St. Rose de Lima, and she was born, into reasonable life conditions, but she embraced a life of poverty, and she embraced a life of penance. And I think her most famous line, I'm going to paraphrase it, is, "There's no other ladder to climb to sanctification than the ladder of the cross." That we must embrace our crosses. And really, when we embrace our crosses, they are transformed. And she said, if we knew the scales of grace, and again, I'm going to assume that she did know the scales of grace. She had this kind of insight. She said, if we all knew the scales of grace, we would seek tribulation. We would ask for penances, because they detach us from this world that is so temporary. And so St. Rose is the reading from her works in the office, the reading today is both inspiring and greatly challenging, because it calls us to be a people who voluntarily embrace our penances and our crosses as the means to climb the road to sanctity. All right, so we hear a little bit more about Ruth today. And so Ruth is poor. How do I know Ruth is poor? Because her and Naomi come back from their, not exile, but they've gone away for the famine. Now they come back to Israel, and Ruth is reduced to gleaning the field. What does that mean? After the harvest, then the poor were allowed to go into the field, and whatever they missed in the first harvest, the poor were allowed to get. That was kind of a standard practice. Don't harvest your field all the way to the edge. Don't go over it a second time. Let the poor come and get what they can get. That was kind of a practice in Israel. And so here's Ruth going to glean the fields, to get what's left over. But then she's befriended by Boaz, and ultimately she marries Boaz, and Boaz has heard of Ruth's reputation and her loyalty and her goodness and all of those things. And so Ruth, who is a foreigner, a Gentile, not of the people of Israel, not a descendant of Abraham, And so Boaz takes Ruth. They become man and wife. She bears a son. And there's this great, Naomi has a relative. And Naomi's husband, who has died, also has an heir. And that heir is going to be Obed. And oh, by the way, Obed's son is going to be Jesse. And Jesse's son is going to be King David. And right down the line, King David's great-great-great-great-great-grandson is going to be who? Jesus. That's right. So Jesus. So Ruth is put into the lineage of Jesus. And it's a beautiful story of providence and patience and humility. And Ruth did not complain about her circumstances, but she embraced her cross, right? And she was, if you will, truly rewarded for that. So today, the little crosses that we bear, the pain in our back, whatever it might be, the traffic, the little crosses, let's bear them patiently and recognize that they are part of the path to sanctification. And the big crosses, the huge crosses, the crosses that we might imagine could kill us, we embrace those crosses kind of as a reminder that we're really not home. We really are on this journey. And so St. Rose de Lima, pray for us.